good morning. 10 more minutes till noon, so good morning. I hope everyone's doing well. I hope you had a good day, going through a lot of good content. I was listening to some of it, very interesting. So before I start my presentation, quick introduction as I mentioned. I'm Riyaz Tambe. I Senior Director for Solutions Engineering at Zscaler. I'll come to what Zscaler does, but a quick round, maybe a quick poll that I'll do. Quick question. Anyone here who feels, or rather anyone here who's not concerned about their own data security? No one, right? I'm not surprised. Which means that we are all concerned. Our data is very important for us. Security matters to us. Agree? Right? Absolutely. So that's what we are. So what is Zscaler? I'll just start with that. What is Zscaler? We are a mission-critical security services provider which delivers security services at hyperscale. When I say hyperscale, I literally mean hyperscale. The idea is you talk about any security services, we deliver it from the cloud. That's what Zscaler is all about, right? That's what we do. You name any large business in India today, in some form, factor or other, they are using Zscaler today. We are clocking close to $2.5 billion. We address, more than 40% of Fortune 500 customers use us globally. We are based in the US, San Jose, California. We have a strong base in India. We've been in operation for the last 12 years. As I said, I mean, we are a security provider which delivers security services from the cloud. The most important piece is making security simple for you, making it easy for you to consume. Why? The sole intent being, how do we make sure that we protect data from any kind of risk, right? And there can be multiple different types of risks which I will talk about, right? And why do I say it's mission critical, right? We today, as I speak today, we actually monitor or secure more than 400 billion transactions on a daily basis. That's the amount of traffic that flows through us. That's the amount of traffic that we're able to secure when our customers' traffic, the traffic that we protect for our customers goes through us. That's the amount of scale that we're talking about. That's the reason I said we provide security services at hyperscale. That's the whole idea, fundamentally. So, what are we seeing? What are the trends that we see in the industry today? Right? I think everyone, this room, I think, is mainly responsible for how they deliver service to your set of customers. Right? Transformation. And I think every business has gone through a transformation. We think of how do we transform our business to deliver better services to our customers. Agree? I think we are all focused on that. But in that journey, have we transformed the way we deliver security? That's the question thing. The reason I say that is because irrespective of what we do from a transformation point of view, have you heard of the breaches going down? Or do we keep on hearing about new types of breaches or risks and threats keep on, on a daily basis? That number is only growing up. It's not coming down. So if digital transformation is driving more agility to deliver more outcomes for your businesses, outcomes for your customers, but at the same time, breaches, threats, risk, that keeps on growing over a period of time. Why? Because I don't think so, the security industry is transformed. That's the main challenge. Second thing is, I think we work in a hybrid environment, and especially in this room, I think a lot of it is cloud-born. Everything is majorly in the cloud. While cloud, we can always, there are different models. We talk about shared responsibility and all that, but ultimately, who is responsible for your data? You are responsible for your data, ultimately, right? You've got to think of how do we secure our data. And when I say data, it could be a leakage happening voluntarily or a leakage happening involuntarily. And what do I mean by that? I'll come to that, right? These are things that we have to think of. Why? Because if an attacker attacks you, a malware could be a means, or a ransomware could be a means of exfiltrating data. That's also data leakage. But also there could be an employee or there could be something else within your environment which voluntarily is taking data out. Or maybe, in some form factor takes data and, people don't know where the risk lies. We've got to define what is our risk. That's the fundamental thing. And that's and on the basis of which we can then define what my data protection policies could look like. But the point is, it could be voluntary, it could be involuntary. So how do we take care of data? I think that's the main thing. We want to make sure that we are able to secure our data irrespective of where it is, right? That's the second thing. Important thing is compliance. I heard a few questions about compliance, right? I think it matters to us. Our businesses depend on us. Our businesses depend on compliance. We have to make sure that we are compliant when we are executing the business that we're into. Agreed? That's the important thing. And it's all about revenue, right? We want to be more agile. We want to make sure that we are able to deliver revenue over a period of time. But then many times what happens is security is seen as something which slows you down. Do you feel so? Does security slow you down? Right? That's a fundamental thing. Because I've been in the world of cybersecurity for more than 2 decades now. Every other customer that I speak to generally would say, oh yeah, what security is going to slow me down. I'm going to, why? Because if I deploy security, I don't know if it's work or no, and then make sure that we have the right policies in place to make sure that I understand, for example, data, right? How do I know which is my critical data? How do I know where my important data is? That takes time, right? If it slows you down in the world of hyperscale, in the world of making sure that we are agile, it shouldn't slow us down. And that's our goal. Our goal is to make sure that we provide you security at speed. That's the whole idea. And that's the reason why we deliver security services from the cloud, which means provisioning becomes easy. Provisioning becomes easy. Why? Because you don't have to wait for appliances to come in. You don't have to wait for anything to come in. Everything happens through the cloud. We deliver our services through the cloud. That's the whole idea. So how do we do it? That's the main thing. So fundamentally the challenge has been, okay, what are we trying to do? As a business, what are we trying to do? We want our users, and my users could be my employees, my customers, my consumers, to access data in some form. It could be my application, which is hosted on a mobile app. It could be my website, whatever. Ultimately, what we're trying to do is, any business, that's what it does. It doesn't matter what domain you're into or what industry you're into. You want to make sure that when your users are connected to your data, it's safe and secure. Agreed? So users accessing data, that's what we are after. The world is also evolved where data also needs to access data. I mean, the whole world of microservices, the whole way we are transforming or delivering our services, yes, there is a lot of need for making sure that data is also able to access data. There's a lot of communication happening across, right? That's what we want to secure. But in the interest of that, what do? We build layers and layers of connectivity. We build layers and layers of connectivity. First, for example, if a user is somewhere and my data is somewhere, I need to make sure there is connectivity available. Generally, what people would do is build networks, right? Build networks, and once those networks are built, add on security as a layer of it, on top of that. Now, if you break down the kill chain, what's the kill chain? That's how breaches or compromises would happen, right? I generally summarize a breach into 4 parts. The first part is recon. Somebody will identify you. That's the first part. Second is compromise, which basically means comes into your environment. Third is lateral movement, where somebody moves within your environment to identify which is the most critical asset that they want to compromise, right? And fourth is exfiltrating data out. Right? These are 4 fundamental, I would say, on a very high level. That's how a breach would happen. The point is, why a lateral? So the entry point for an attacker, will an attacker, if I'm an attacker, am I going to target the most critical asset first or an easy entry point? I always target an easy entry point. That's why you read about any breach, you talk about any security incident, the entry point is going to be a weak link. The weakest link. It could be a third-party contractor. It could be somebody who's dealing with the data, somebody who's doing, back-end data entry into an environment, right? It could be a machine which is not up to date, whatever it is, but that becomes an entry point. That's how any breach would work, because an attacker they don't want to spend time and cycles, because it's an investment for them, right? To go after your critical assets. So what they do is, entry point is a very simple, easy-looking weak link coming into an environment, and the most common thing is doing lateral movement. Why is lateral movement possible? Because you created the network, right? You created an environment to connect it for connectivity. Correct? Right? And the world that we talk about is basically all IP communications, whether we like it or not. So when you allow one IP to communicate with another IP, you've created a network. And that network becomes the layer or the foundation for lateral movement, fundamentally. That's been the problem that has now become a problem from a traditional approach point of view. The traditional approach is, yes, I need to have a network where everything is visible to everyone. Correct? When a user, for example, is connected to your applications, there is visibility, right? If I'm an attacker, right? If I log into if I compromise a machine, and if I do a simple lookup on that machine, okay, what are the different, assets which I can reach from that machine, it's pretty visible. I can do a simple nmap on the machine and figure it out. Correct? As simple as that. That's been a traditional problem. What we are trying to do is, instead of relying on the network, instead of relying on the network, can I create a layer which is an overlay? It's sort of like an overlay layer, where our simple goal is to make sure that how do we make sure that users connect with the data, connect with your application, your data in the most secure manner, and in a way that we avoid things like lateral movement, we avoid things like recon, we avoid things like somebody trying to compromise. So there are different types of services that we keep on adding on top of that, right? So we become, and even for data communication, simple, a very simple example could be, for example, you've got workloads sitting in your cloud environment. Some workloads in cloud, some workloads in multiple cloud environments, some workloads in your on-prem data centers, depending on the type of business that you're into. The idea is how these two workloads communicate with each other. It might be required. So the idea is we become that fundamental layer for you for any type of communication happening between your users to your applications or your data, from your maybe a certain workload to a certain workload. We become that central, you can say, inspection layer to make sure that we can provide that level of security. What do you need for that? Nothing. No appliances. It's a subscription-based service. It's on the cloud, which means you can actually provision this in a matter of hours and minutes. As simple as that. Cool? Now, the important thing is what all different things that we do. As I mentioned, our goal is to make sure that we secure users connecting to applications, secure your communication between workloads, irrespective of where your data is. Data could be your employee sitting somewhere at home. Data could be a user roaming. Data could be your consumers accessing your data. Data could be your application which has multiple different services probably talking to each other. It could be anything, right? That's the whole idea. So what we do is, it's very simple. Now, from a security point of view, as I mentioned, the way compromises generally would happen because we have traditionally been dependent on IP-based communication. Correct? Right? A typical challenge that we have is today, how many devices do we have? On an average? On an average, 2 or 3? Maybe 2, maybe 3. 2 is by default there. I think 2 is like laptop and mobile. That's the standard. Like by default 2 is there. Right? Now if I have to define security policy and have to secure services, make sure that everything is secure, which IP address do I secure? Right? When a user, for example, say Alok, there's a user Alok. Alok when he's in office, right, what is his level of access? Alok when he goes home, what's his level of access? Alok through a corporate provided device, what is his access? Alok through his own personal device, what is the level of access? The point is the context of the user and the context of data is changing. It's ever changing. It's ever evolving. We cannot depend on networking principles like IP address communication. So the fundamental thing that you need, first of all, to secure is identity. Everything has to be identity based. Right? If a user, for example, Alok is there, I need to know whether this is a valid user Alok. If it's a compromised machine and an attacker tries to snoop in, no, we first need to authenticate, authorize, and then allow. So the principle that we built our solution on is very simple. First, prove yourself. Because as I said, we are a mission critical layer. Nothing can pass through us till the time you prove who you are. Authentication becomes key. That's the first thing. The second thing is, where are you going? What are you trying to access? Right? What is the destination that you're going towards? That's the second principle. Third is, what is the risk? And the risk could be, are you clean traffic, bad traffic, or good traffic? It could be a malware. It could be something which can exfiltrate data out. It could be lateral movement. It could be something which has the potential to leading to a breach. How do we scan all that? So we have those capabilities to scan everything. And then making sure that once everything is clear, we allow the traffic to go through. I'll just take just 2 minutes. So point is, we provide you with complete security from a connectivity point of view, but also from all types of different cyber attacks that you can think of. We can be the one-stop shop for you to make sure that all types of security challenges can be taken care of. The other last important piece, which is ultimately is your data. I just spoke about it. The cyber threat protection, the connectivity part of it. We also do a lot of business analytics on part of it, but the important piece which I want to just emphasize on is data protection. Right? The important piece for you is data. Now, data could be in multiple different places. Data could be at rest, which is sitting in your cloud environment, right? It could be sitting on wherever your assets are being hosted, or it could be your endpoints where your users or employees are, or it could be anywhere else, right? So first is, how do you make sure that data at rest, is safe and secure? It all depends on classification. So we can help you to classify data, and we use a lot of AI in the backend to make sure that we can classify data. Second is data in motion, right? Data in motion could be, data moving between user and the workloads, or workloads to workloads. When data is hosted on the cloud, are your configurations right? Anything could lead to data being exfiltrated or data getting compromised. That's the whole idea. So we have engines, we've built engines which can help you to protect your data, irrespective of whether it's in motion, whether it's in a SaaS environment, whether it's in a SaaS environment or in a cloud environment. Right? It could be SaaS, it could be cloud. The typical problem with the SaaS environment is there are APIs communications happening at the cloud level, at the SaaS level, which can actually, I'm not saying exfiltrate data, but point is data could go in places where you don't want it to. That's the whole idea, right? How do you make sure that from your SaaS environment to maybe some whatever third-party services which are getting integrated as part of APIs, that's also secure. That's also something that we can do. The other important piece is endpoint, as I mentioned a lot. So as I said, if you remember what I said, the risk for data is not just voluntary but also involuntary, right? So classification of data becomes important, but also making sure that something like malware, ransomware, all those bad things should also not happen. That's where it's important to classify also data on the endpoint level and make sure that we have the right protections and policies available for it. And then bring your own device. Simple. I'll give a very simple use case and then I'll end my session. A very simple use case that a lot of customers come to us and say, you know what, I have a SaaS application, and sometimes my users have to access that application or that data from non-manageable devices. It means that the device does not belong to me. It's a bring your own device. We want to do that. But I don't want users to connect to my application using BYOD in an insecure manner. How can I secure it? Now, if that device is not controlled by you, the challenge is how do I have that communication? And we've come up with unique ways of doing it. I'll give you a very simple way. The single way is we've come up with a very innovative way called isolation services. What is isolation? It's nothing but, say from a mobile device or maybe from a laptop, whatever it is, it's a non-manageable device. I can initiate a session to my application, right? That session is intercepted, and that session is actually sort of like it's a isolated environment which is created in our environment, and that's where the communication happens on the cloud. That's how it communicates to your actual application. The point is, if the user's machine tries to access application, there could be data communication happening on the endpoint. Because ultimately when you browse something from your browser, obviously there is some, you fetch the data, you get the data, something else, there is exchange. When you host it through an isolation service, there is nothing that's downloaded on your endpoint. So from a BYOD point of view, from a device which is non-manageable, nothing comes there. Which means the risk of that endpoint being compromised and a possibility of data getting exfiltrated, a possibility of data getting compromised completely goes away, because that session is hosted from the cloud. The user only sees pixelation, it only sees streaming. There's no actual data communication. Now that is configurable. You can actually say, oh, I want data to be uploaded, downloaded. That can happen, but that control is with you, right? That's how we're also able to secure your bring your own device, or you can say any device communication through a critical application. Idea is, our service can help you to protect data irrespective of where it is. The focus is to make sure that we can secure data irrespective of whether it's on endpoint, cloud, wherever it is. That's what Zscaler is all about. So on a very high level. Happy to take questions, but I guess we are running out of time. But thanks for your attention. I'm going to be here around if you have any questions.
Give Mr. Riyaz